Oh, I have this friend, Jim, who is one of the two people who have walked with me through my whole dark night. The other is my wife. And Julie is the one, of course, who got strapped into the seat beside me. She deserves to be lauded and praised, and songs should be written about her. She has been so amazing. But my friend Jim and I, we've been talking, wow, ever since before this whole thing began, way back when I was a pastor. I went dark 5 years ago or so. I was sharing people my journey as I went through this process. And then it just got too confusing, too messy, too dark, and I pulled the plug. And for the last 5 years, I haven't said anything publicly because I just knew I needed to do some work in here. And so I've been working on this book to try to explain where I've landed. And that is kind of important to me because it was pretty obvious to me right away when I had my big meltdown that there are a lot of people going through similar meltdowns. Their faith structure, whatever that may be, whether it's religion or their job or their marriage or their health or their nation, their world, all these things seem to be crumbling right now. And a lot of people are experiencing this frustration. But specifically with regard to church, a lot of people have kind of realized that the faith they were a part of, the things that they were doing were effing crazy. And some people feel really misled. Some people are angry. And so when you come out of church, I mean, it feels like, oh, you're just mad. And so I felt all of that when I left and really realized that I was no longer could honestly call myself a Christian. I looked back at how I had gotten in, how I had been so deeply hooked into the religion, and I just found myself mad. And so there were all these voices. I have this picture in my mind of Django Unchained. And you remember when Django blew up Candyland? It's just Quentin Tarantino, over the top, explosions. And that to me is a picture of people coming out of religion. They look back on it and they just want to blow it to smithereens. And I didn't feel that way because, well, number one, I was the propagator of the religion, but also there had been a lot of really true and beautiful things that had been a part of my life in the church. And I just didn't feel like I was adding much to share my anger and frustration and pain. So I stepped way back for a long time and really into a darkness that was so deep that it's painful even to describe. So I'm not there anymore. I've come through that, and I have been really in a place for the last 2 or 3 years where I feel more settled, more at peace, more sense of purpose. I'm okay, I guess is what I'm trying to say. In fact, I'm more than okay. I feel more alive than I have ever felt before. And I've been wanting to share that. And so I started by telling my story of why I got into church and out. And of course, you can see that on my Facing Up book that I just wrote. But I'm really been working on a second book, which I want to explain the life of living beyond belief. Because that is the tagline, right, of this website, Facing Up, Life Beyond Belief. And I am convinced that there is life beyond belief. I'm living life beyond belief. I think it is for me, it has been just really liberating. And I think it could be useful to a lot of other people too. So I've been trying to put that into this masterpiece. And I use that word with Jim. I said, I'm working on my masterpiece. And he kind of, you could just see the woo, 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 red lights, going off. And he's like, okay, masterpiece time. That sounds like something you're never going to publish. And he's probably right about that trying to share with you this place I've landed and to put that into some big, beautiful masterpiece, that's going to take me some time. I hope to do it this year. I mean, I'm not putting this off forever, but philosophy is interesting because there are two ways of thinking about philosophy. One is philosophy as sort of explanations, the metaphysics, what's up there in the ether, and what really is a human being, and what is consciousness, and all these big esoteric questions. And philosophers think about those, and just like theologians debating how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, well, philosophers debate all these concepts that are really pretty abstruse. Isn't that a great word? Abstruse is an abstruse word. Abstract, irrelevant, don't really touch the ground. So that's one way of thinking of philosophy. But there is another way. And some of the ancient philosophers really regarded philosophy as a description of how to live. The question is not, what is all this and who made it and what is it? It's more like, what does it mean to be human and how do I live? How do I live is the big question. The Stoicism is a great example, or Plato and Aristotle describing how the state should look. I mean, the question is sort of like, how do we live? How do we muddle through life? And so I want to really address both of those things, and the book that I'm writing will address both of those things. But I thought, Jim is right. I should start sharing the life right now, even though this may be messy. And my pledge to you is to edit this as little as possible, to just make this as if you were sitting across the table from me and I'm just sharing with you. So here comes the way of life. When I lost my faith, it really was a dark night. I get why they call it a dark night. It was a time of depression, of confusion, of just hurt. I withdrew. I mean, I was like a wounded animal. And, I hid in Seattle and I was hiding in a corner and trying to, figure out what now. I had no story on which to base my life. No reason to go on. I was in so much pain that I really wanted my life to be over. I didn't ever really get close to like taking means to make that happen. But if you would have told me like you're going to die tonight, I would have said, whew, thank God. Because that's how much it hurt. I just wanted it to end. And that darkness, as I went through that, well, my best friend was my journal, and I'm kind of a journal geek. I started in probably over 10 years ago now, journaling every morning. Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, got me going and thinking of journaling in a different way. But I began to just journal, and as I worked my way through my darkness, I noticed that there were three darknesses, how do I put it, forces. I started calling them specters because a specter is like a ghost, right? Some scary ghost. I called them specters. There were three questions that just kept coming up and kept haunting me. And every time I felt like I was making progress or figuring something out, here comes one of the specters and they just would knock me over. These three specters, which I saw as enemies, it turns out opened a door to a new way of life. But I had to face them. And so let me tell you what those three dark forces were. The first one is just the fact that I don't know anything. And in fact, that most of the questions that we have as human beings are not answerable. I love the television show Lost. At least I love how it started. It had a very disappointing ending, but the show in the beginning just gripped everybody. And I think it's because here are these people who have landed on this mysterious plane crash and on a mysterious island, and there are mysterious forces, and they don't know why they're there. They don't know what's going on. There are some others over the hill. It's smoke monsters and all these strange things. It's just, life is so mysterious. That to me is a pretty good picture of human existence. For all of our religion and philosophy and all of our thinking, we woke up on this blue ball in space, and we've been trying to figure out what the hell is going on ever since. And the one thing I came to a conviction about as I worked through all this is that nobody knows. Nobody knows. And I called this specter Ignarus, like ignorance. I had to come up with fancy Latin names for them. So Ignarus. Nobody knows. So, well, if nobody knows, then what's the point? Well, nobody knows. It's just, And every time I would sort of like come up with some theory or whatever, here came Ignarus to just like knock my Tower of Babel over, and that was the end of that. The second dark force was the realization that I could never come to the end of the rainbow, that there were really no such things as happy endings. And I started singing this song, Three Blind Mice. Three blind mice, see how they run, see how they run. They all ran after the farmer's wife, who cut off their tails with a carving knife. Have you ever seen such a sight in your life as three blind mice? And I looked around at my world and I thought, that's it. Look at us running around, three blind mice. And here's this farmer's wife with her carving knife cutting off our tails. But I spell tails Tales. What I realized is that no matter what endeavor I set out to do, get married, have a family, build a house, become a pastor, get a PhD, all the things I've done, all of them were meaningful. All of them brought joy in the pursuit. But when I got there, it wasn't a happy ending. It was more like the dog that caught the car. Well, what do I do with this now? And time just kept marching on. There were no happy endings. And so it got to be really like frustrating. And I looked at, I wasn't alone, right? You got Bono, who can't get no satisfaction. Jagger, I got that backwards. Bono hasn't found what he's looking for. That's it. Jagger can't get no satisfaction. And if you read the book of Ecclesiastes, you find this, a book that's probably falsely attributed to Solomon. But anyway, this great wisdom literature from the Old Testament. And the conclusion is, vanity of vanities. All is vanity. There are no happy endings. The farmer's wife, who incidentally looks a lot like Father Time or the Grim Reaper with this scythe or sickle coming at us to cut off our life, to cut off our existence. The problem wasn't that I couldn't find happiness. The problem that there was no happy ending. And so the problem wasn't happiness, it was the ending. There was always some farmer's wife coming at me to cut off my tail with her carving knife. I called this vanitas, like vanity, right? Vanity, all is vanity. What's the point? You can chase the car, you can never catch it. And even if you do catch it, it's unsatisfying. Can't get no satisfaction. So that was the second specter. There's Ignarus, nobody knows. Vanitas, can't get to the end of the rainbow. And the third one was the worst of all. This one I had a hard time even admitting to, because it cut the deepest. It really cut to the very core of my existence. And it's hard for me even to find the right words for it, but it's the realization that everyone and everything is selfish. Now, as a Christian, of course, I'd been taught to think, well, don't be selfish, be generous, and God is love, and God is just giving, 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 and we can be the same way, and there's just this fountain of goodness flowing from everyone and everything. Well, that all sounds really good, except it ain't true. Everything and everyone is in it for him or herself, and that even includes God. The very first commandment is, no gods before me. In other words, me first. And you say, well, God has the right to do that because he's God. Well, if we're supposed to try to be like God, then to me that says we should be selfish. And by the way, the first 4 commandments are all versions of me first. So that's God, but then I saw it in other people, I saw it in myself, and all these promises of people sort of thinking of me first just didn't come true. And the more I really wrestled with that, it seemed obvious to me, like it's logically impossible not to be selfish. If I am a self, I have to be selfish. To be unselfish would be not to exist. And I do not know why it is set up this way. I don't like it. I wish that the world worked on just people giving and giving and giving to each other. But if you dig deep on the motive of every action in the universe, if you look hard enough, you're going to find selfishness. And you might say, well, what about a soldier who gives his life for the country, or Jesus giving his life for the salvation of humankind? Well, the soldier doesn't do that because there's no value in it for him. The soldier understands that there is greater value in that. There is a deeper joy in laying down his life than in clinging to it. So even something as generous as martyrdom is not done because there's nothing in it for you. And Jesus, for the joy set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame. So Jesus went through that knowing the Father would be pleased, that in the end, that God would vindicate him, all those things. And he valued, the loss and all of that. But so I'm not trying to argue a particular theological point here, but I'm just saying, as I looked around, it was just, I saw this when I went backpacking, it just made me angry. The clouds of mosquitoes around my head and just the coldness of nature when I was lost. Man, you have not felt the coldness of the universe until you've been out by yourself in the wilderness and gotten really lost. And I've done that a few times, and man, does the world feel alienating. So here I am, very much alone. It was as if when God said to Adam, kill and eat, he accidentally CC'd all. So bugs in this universe are a feature, not a bug. That's another way I thought about it. And so, you may quibble with me about this. I understand if you're like arguing with me in your mind about this, but I didn't want to believe this either. But I'm sorry, it's true. We have been plopped down in an episode of The Hunger Games. And by the way, I think that's the reason that movie resonated so deeply with people as well, because we're all like in this thing where it's kill or be killed. And I may complain about the mosquito taking a bite out of me, but I have no problem, biting into a nice juicy steak. It's not just other people, it's me. This specter I called Rapax, as in rape, as in predation, as in there's this dark force out there that has pitted us against each other. So that's darkness. Are you enjoying the darkness? In Yarus, we don't know. Vanitas, no end of the rainbow, and Rapax, this selfishness that's that we experience everywhere. And as I was going through this, there was a light. And I even started to think of it as, the darkness is a door. There was this way through this to another way of living. Oh, and I just got to tell you this little story going back because it's so interesting to me. When I was still a pastor, I was going through a period where I was meditating and spending some time doing that in the mornings. And one morning I had this, I guess you call it a vision, but it was just this picture of this dark entrance. And I was being beckoned to go into this darkness. And I didn't want to go. It was scaring me. I knew that if I went in there, I would lose everything. And yet there was this come on. And there's something on the other side of this. And that turned out to be sort of a premonition because that's exactly what happened. I had to go through this darkness. And the darkness was like meaninglessness or hopelessness or lovelessness. It was really dark. But the promise was that there was life on the other side. And I have found that to be true. So let's make things a little brighter for a minute. And let me describe to you how each of these specters opened a door to a brightness or to a joy or to life on the other side. And they all began with a choice. So in Yaros, we don't know. Nobody knows. We're all lost now. Okay. One response to that is, well, if we're all lost, then what's the point? Nothing matters. But you don't have to do that. It's also possible to look at this world and all the mystery of it and just go, whoa, wow. And it hit me that even like as a Christian, that the times in church that I was most like inspired were not the times when someone explained something to me. They were times when I came up to the edge of a vastness and was just in awe. I think I felt that when my mother was reading me the Chronicles of Narnia. It wasn't because there was some theological, like certainties that were being, pounded into my head. It was more this sense of wonder of that book. And so wonder has always been there, but wonder is a choice in the face of ignorance. And so that wonder freed me not to be like have to cling to some sort of story or faith or idea, whatever it might be, my obviously my Christianity, but it could maybe if your marriage shattered, if your health shattered, whatever the story was that you thought like gave your life meaning, when those shatter, and they always do, you're left with this, oh gosh, now what? Well, despair is very understandable, but there is a choice. You can look at life and just say, wow, this is amazing. And that frees you then to enter back into your story in a new way, not as a foundation of your life, but as an expression of wonder. This is an amazing world. Let's go exploring. Let's try to understand more. Let's see all that we can see. And you're not like clinging to your beliefs because you think that you've created some sort of eternal truth or something like that. You're just going, wow, let's go exploring. Good science is that way too. Good science has that sense of wonder. And there's dogmatic science too, right? That has sort of that cocksure, we've got it all figured out, or 99% of the way. And we just don't. And it's that sense of wonder that I think is what makes life wonderful. Okay, so that's wonderful and sort of like this a freedom to tell stories. The second specter and the second thing that I had discovered was, okay, vanitas. we come to the end of our rainbow and the pot of gold is moved to another rainbow, and we keep chasing this pot of gold and it keeps being moved ahead of us. We're chasing a carrot on a stick, and we realize that and we say, what's the point? So one response when life breaks, as it always does, when we get to the end of the rainbow and, have a little gold and then realize I want more gold, and you go get it. One response to that is despair. What's the point? Why bother? You know, but you don't have to. There's another response, and this is a choice that you can make, and a choice that I realized I could make, is that I could say, yeah, every story gets cut off, but it never was the ending that gave life meaning anyway. It was the pursuit. It was, going back to the story, whatever story I'm telling, it's that joy of living out the story in pursuit of something, but not with the idea that when you get there, you'll just be, that will be it. That's your happy ending. Imagine two kids at the beach. They're building a sandcastle. They're having a great time. The sun is shining and they're really decking it out and making it beautiful. And this old man comes up and says, "You stupid kids, don't you know that in 20 minutes the tide's coming in and it will destroy everything you're building?" Well, they look at him like, oh, duh, of course. I mean, the kids get it, right? And in general, kids do get it. Maybe that's why Jesus says you got to be like a kid. But I mean, the kids get it that this is not an eternal castle. They were enjoying the building of the castle, the air, the sound of the birds, the chasing around, the digging the moat, all of that. The moment wouldn't last forever. Forever was in the moment. And so they weren't obsessed with the ending like we are. And so releasing this ending, this happy ending, is a way of just looking at life and accepting it. And so acceptance is another response that you can have as opposed to despair. I accept this. Now, acceptance is not apathy. Acceptance is not, well, okay, I guess we just gotta, life sucks and then you die. I mean, that's not acceptance. That's more despair. Acceptance is leaning into the moment. I mean, I always picture Eric Liddell, Chariots of Fire, just running and saying, when I run, I feel that my Maker's joy in me, like just this joy of running, this joy of being alive. It's a choice that I could make. And so I like to call that play. I think play is a wonderful way to describe this because when you play, you're engaging in the right way. You care. You're trying to win. You have some objective, but you're not clinging to it as if when you get it done, then you've built your eternal kingdom and everything's going to be okay. And so I like to think of it as moving from hope, which is future oriented, and one day I'll go to heaven, or one day I'll get $1 million and retire, or whatever. Some happiness is always over there somewhere, to play, where, yeah, there's a goal, but the joy is in the play, in the game. Okay, so summarizing here, we have Ignarus and the choice of wonder, and then the ability to tell stories. And then we have Vanitas and a choice of acceptance and the freedom to play. One last movement here, and that is in response to Rapax. And again, this one I hate. It's the worst of all. But so when we face this dark selfishness that is so woven into the fabric of our existence, one understandable response is just alienation. Just everything and everyone is out to get me. I felt this so strongly. I mean, this is what hurt the worst. And looking back on it, it was really this that made me disillusioned with church, because we presented church as this place where we were kind of beyond that, where we had been set free from that. But I experienced what I think everyone experiences. In any human environment, there is selfishness. We can't get away from it. And so it's pretty understandable to go to this, just this, oh, nobody loves me, everybody hates me, guess I'll go eat worms. A movie for this might be There Will Be Blood. Daniel Plainview at the end of that movie, all by himself in his mansion. I just want to get away from people and be alone. And he's got his bowling alley and he beats the beats the guy to death with a bowling pin and the whole, just like people suck, I just want to, but the thing about that is when you choose that, you close off your world, you shrink your own soul, and it's a very dismal place to be. It's understandable in light of the fact that our world is so bloodthirsty, red in tooth and claw. I mean, it really is. But there is a choice. You don't have to choose that. And I realized that I could choose compassion. Now, this choice of compassion was not because I'm a good person or because other people deserved it. It was a choice that I found to be more life-giving, more joyful. I just found that I could look at other people now and see that, oh, we're all in the same boat here. In fact, this wound that we have, this brokenness, our curse, this common curse that we have in this world is our deepest bond. I get why people act the way they act. I can have compassion. And that doesn't mean I agree. I may have to fight them even, but I don't judge. What's to judge? I mean, we're all in this crazy situation. And so my attitude toward other people, rather than shoving them away, could be to wrap my arms around them and say, man, I get it. I get it. And somehow in doing that, there is this widening of my soul, this openness that comes in. And that compassion turns into acts of kindness. Or I like the word harmony, where it's not that I'm become unselfish, but it's just that I've figured out that it's possible to harmonize, to be with other people and allow them to be them and me to be me and find a way to be together. And again, when you're free from this dogma of some faith and hope and this rigid story, there's this flexibility to love all kinds of people. And just like in the Hunger Games, there are people running around who are not compassionate, who are like, those teams that train their whole life just to kill people. I mean, there are some really, people going around alienated and determined to conquer and destroy and crush. I mean, to take their power and wield it. And that is actually miserable for them too. I mean, you got to fight that. But even in fighting that, it's not because, oh, I'm better than that or I'm somehow above that. It's just that that's a sucky way to live. Just like alienation is miserable, going around trying to crush everybody else is miserable. Yeah, Daniel Plainview. Or another example is, on The Simpsons, Montgomery Burns. Right? The nuclear power plant operator guy, the billionaire up on the hill. Have you ever noticed when you look at him how much he looks like a mosquito? And does anyone want to be Montgomery Burns? I mean, or Daniel Plainview. See, conquering, it's just, it's a sucky way to live. And so I like to say that I choose compassion and kindness, not because I'm good, but because they are good. So those are the three ways of life. I call those the three movements. And just to summarize, then they each start with an unanswerable or this horrible discovery: lostness, longing, loneliness. But there is a choice that I make: wonder, acceptance, compassion. And that opens up a door to live in this world in a new way. not dogmatically locked on my story, but telling stories with the freedom to express myself, to have adventures, to sing my own song, to be myself in this world in a playful way so that I'm not like rigidly, it's got to come out this way or whatever, and to do it in harmony with other people. And so, okay, what I've been doing for many months now is this. I focus on one of those three movements each day. And that's the way, practically speaking, that I face up. And by face up, I mean like get honest. I mean like don't pretend like these things aren't real. Oh gosh, part of my tangent, but it just is so obvious to me that most people spend their whole lives hiding from the specters. They pretend they do know, or they just try not to think about it, or that they can find eternal happiness, even though when they look at it, you can't. That everybody is kind and good when no, we're all kind of selfish. I mean, so we spend a lot of energy running from the specters. It's understandable; they're scary, but so what I mean by facing up is that you face these three darknesses. And these darknesses open a door to a way of being that is so much richer than running and hiding or being locked into a dogma. Or going to war with people because they're trying to win your game, and your game is the game, and whatever at all costs we have to win. I mean, that's what happens when you're not playing, when you're like eternal destiny depends on you building your sandcastle and putting your name on it and moving in, and like this lie of the eternal happy ending, or this tribalism that happens when we don't recognize that we're all in the same boat as human beings. Okay, so this way of living to me is rich. And so what I do is on Monday, I think about the first movement, Ignarus, Wonder, and what songs am I singing? And on Tuesday, I think about Vanitas, no happy endings, but I'm going to play. And on Wednesday, I think about Rapax, and I just get honest with myself about my own selfishness and see it in other people. But I think, you know what? Compassion. I choose compassion, and I will be kind. And I, as much as I can, I seek a win-win with people and seek to live in harmony. So Monday for wonder, Tuesday for acceptance, Wednesday for compassion. And then I do it again. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I just repeat that process. And then on Sunday, I think about the whole thing. And so these three movements, I'm trying to think about what to call it. Right now, I just call it the three movements. But these to me are my attempt, my way of living that faces up to the facts that it seems obvious to me that most people are trying to pretend are not true. Okay, so that's it. That's facing up. That is the best I can do it today to tell you how I am living my life. Well, what life beyond belief looks like to me, what it means, what facing up means to me. So this, as I said, I'm going to do on each week. I'm going to post just some thoughts about the life. I've given you the overview, but as we go forward, who knows what I may talk about each week. I'm hoping eventually we might be able to get some guests on to talk with me and think through some of these things in more detail. But it's really about this life of facing up. That's what I find to be. It's not just interesting. That's what I find to be life. That's what I find to be meaningful. It's what gives me the reason to get out of the bed each morning. So I'll keep working on my book, And one of these days, I hope before the end of the year, it's one of my games, right? One of my songs I'm singing. I want to get this done, and I want to get it to you because I really would love to share with you in more well thought out, well worded detail what this is all about. This has been a little rambly, and I apologize for that. I hope you're able to follow what I'm saying. I'll add a few pictures to this if you want to look at those. And I also invite you to join my mailing list. I've decided to start just a group of people that are interested and want to be friends of Facing Up Club. So, like, what do you get for that? Well, not much. you get the, you're just saying to me, if you join my mailing list, this is interesting to me. And, yeah, keep me updated, and I will kind of let you know how things are going and maybe share some things with you that I might not put on the podcast. But if you sign up for the mailing list, you're just a person out there who's saying, I think this is interesting, like keep me in touch. And I promise not to fill your inbox with a bunch of junk. I'll end with a little poem that I'm working on. It's actually not done yet, but this is where it stands. I'm falling through the air, from who knows whence to who knows where. I find the songs that to me matter and sing 'em till the day I splatter. I'd love to harmonize with you, make music till the day is through. My life is such a wondrous cup. Why not drink it facing up?